So first of all, I was a camper in Gan Yisrael, Kalkaska, Michigan in Tufshin Memhei. Chaim Libracha. And there was an organization at the time called Jewish Educational Media, and the Rebbe's Farbrengen would be broadcast via satellite and in some places on cable TV, live at the time. Now, I don't know if you guys know what a satellite is, because today, to be watching stuff around the world is not a really big deal, because you could do that online. But basically, a satellite is a piece of equipment that flies several hundred miles away in space. And in order to see from one part of the world to another, you beam, it's called a dish, you beam the signal of what's happening, the television signal, up into the space, and it beams back down in another part of the world. And if it's really far away, like to Australia, one satellite beams to another around the world until you could see it. Today, obviously, we don't need that as much anymore, but that's the way it works. Anyway, long story short, you could not see the Yud Beis Tammuz Farbrengen in Gan Yisrael and Kalakaska. So we were sitting in a motel in Traverse City, Michigan. I think we rented like 3 rooms, if I recall correctly. I was 10 years old at the time. And I remember, what do you remember as a kid? You remember that you were in a motel. You remember seeing the screen and the Rebbe was speaking and hearing the translation. But then, without a question, you remember that the Rebbe was screaming. The Rebbe was very, very upset about something. As a kid, he didn't know exactly what. And it went on for a while. The Rebbe was upset. The Rebbe was screaming. Everybody's confused. What's going on? What's happening? And over the next few days, we started to learn there's a guy who stole. The Rebbe's upset. Svarim are missing. And before long, I believe it was that summer, certainly the next summer, but I believe it was even that summer that we started saying Tillim every day. The Kapitlach every day after davening Chaf Beis and Samachtes. There was, of course, the Farbrengen and the Yechidus a couple nights later. Tesvav Tammuz, which I'm sure everybody here knows, where the Rebbe spoke even more sharply about it. That was not on television, but we heard it. And this thing started that there's a problem. We didn't really understand what it was, but there were Svarim that were stolen. There was this bad guy out there. His name was Barry. He had a Goyish name. And he stole the Rebbe's Svarim. And we have to get them back. And the Rebbe is very, very upset about it. And then, of course, after camp, it continued. And then before long, we learned that there was a court case going on. And we continued to say Tillim. And the Chassidische, the older Bachrim, would fast. We heard people were fasting. There were people who were waking up every morning and saying the whole Tillim. If I recall correctly, even the kids, there was a tiny shoy certain days that we didn't eat until lunch, the more Chassidische kids. But there was a serious, serious problem going on. We knew that there was a court case. Anyway, it schlepped on for a long time until Hey Teves Tufshin Mem Zayin. I was in a classroom with Rabbi Yossi Shem Tov was my teacher. And somebody knocked on the door, one of the teachers, in Farmington Hills. And he said, Ich weiß nicht, sie gedei mevatel Teire sein, aber mir sagt, as Miseferana Shmua, as die da notzach. And Rabbi Shem Tov's chair flew back 4, 5, 6 feet. And he said, what? And he darted out of the room. It took about as you say in video language, 20 frames. A second is 30 frames. There are 29.97 frames of video in a second. Talking about 20 frames, he was out the door. And we all started screaming and yelling and jumping up and down. And he ran to the other side of the doors where we weren't allowed to go. And he made phone calls. And I took out my calling card and I called any number that I knew in Crown Heights to ask, is it true? And everybody said, we don't know. We heard. They went to find out. Anyway, before long, we learned that Taka Didan Notzach and the Rebbe won everything. And we were dancing, we were singing. And then a message came from across the doors that Rabbi Shem Tov said that he's flying everybody to New York. Half he's giving, and half, if you're going to learn something Balpet to be determined later, he's going to cover that half of the ticket as well. I can tell you I didn't learn anything, 50% of anything, and no one asked me actually for money for the ticket. But anyway, within like 2-3 hours, the whole yeshiva was on the plane. We were on the way to Crown Heights, to New York, to be by the Rebbe. The Chassidim, the Shluchim, they were saying L'chaim already in the airport. Satzach Geton. By the way, I heard that this story is on Living Torah tonight for me, but I just want to tell you, those Chevra and JEM, they chop things up, and they didn't leave the whole story. They missed all the important details. L'dugma, when we were in LaGuardia, I remember Befedish. Like, how could you leave out a detail like this? Rabbi Shem Tov said, and we had to wait there for like 25, you can imagine, everybody's auf Spilkus. You want to get to 770, right? You want to get to the Rebbe. But we had to wait for 2 or 3 limousines to pull up, and we all crammed in. And on the Interborough, today it's called the Jackie Robinson, Rabbi Shem Tov put his head out the sunroof, and he lost his hat. And that's why for the next week, he's either without a hat or with a very smashed up little old hat, because Rabbi Shem Tov's, if anybody finds a hat on the side of the Interborough, today the Jackie, you should know it's Rabbi Shem Tov's hat, you should give it back to him. But that was from Hey Teves, because the limousines that we were going to. Anyway, by the way, you could imagine how embarrassed a young Bochor is. But then I was 12 years old. I was wearing my first bar mitzvah, my pre-bar mitzvah. I was a month before my bar mitzvah. And you can imagine how embarrassing it was to pull up in front of 770. Everybody's dancing, everybody's saying L'chaim, you're pulling up in limousines. You got out and you went running, you wanted to get away. Anyway, Al Kopanim, so for a week, we danced, we Farbrengen, whatever, we were 12 years old, but somehow we Farbrengen. We were happy because the Rebbe was happy, because the Rebbe was clearly unhappy before, and the Rebbe was happy now. I want to share just a couple of things that I saw that maybe you won't see in the videos, or that others maybe didn't see, because everything else, the Olam does the Zicher Bahavant in these things. So I remember Mitzoy Vav Teves, the Rebbe davened in the small Zal in 770, Ma'ariv. Now, I heard, this is something I did not see, but this is what I heard later, that on the way out of the Rebbe's office, he asked Rabbi Groner, or the Rebbe wanted to go downstairs, and Rabbi Groner told the Rebbe that Ma'ariv tonight will be in the small Zal upstairs. So Kanira, the Rebbe was, the Rebbe was like kind of knew he wanted to say something, obviously. So I was in the small Zal, actually, for Ma'ariv. So the door is open. The Rebbe is coming in from his office, so you could see straight into Gan Eden HaTachten. If you're standing right there near the Rebbe's place, straight in from Gan Eden HaTachten. The Rebbe walks in. It comes right over here next to the door to Daven Ma'ariv. You follow where we are? The Rebbe's office is there. There's the door to the small Zal. The hallway is here. The Rebbe walks in. He davens Ma'ariv right. He davens right inside the door to the small Zal. Now, I'm kind of in that twilight zone between being a kid, because I'm before bar mitzvah, but I have my little hat. I'm also shorter than everybody. Whatever it is, I figured out I was standing in the front, really where the kids are supposed to stand. But, if you come early, whatever. I'll explain to you some other time how you get that done. But I was standing right in front, and the Rebbe came in, Daven Ma'ariv, and everything Kamuvin in the small Zal is much more compact. The way you see the videos in the big Zal, there's a big rug, and the Rebbe's, most of the time in the videos, the Rebbe's on a bimah, even though really most of the time the Rebbe daven not with a bimah. But in the videos, most of them are with a bimah because they're from the later years or they're from Tishrei. But anyway, it's a much smaller carpet, and everything is much, the Rebbe's carpet is not longer than this table, a few feet long, and everything is small. So you're a couple feet away from the Rebbe. The last Kaddish finishes, and the Rebbe turns on a stender. I'm standing right here. The Rebbe turns, if I recall correctly, the Rebbe closed his eyes and started speaking. There's no microphone. Nobody's ready for this. Nobody was prepared. So the first thing that happens, everybody pushes in. So I'm standing here. The Rebbe's chair is, let's say the stender is here. The Rebbe's chair is behind him. I'm standing right on the other side of the chair. The scariest thing is that everybody's pushing in. You start pushing the Rebbe's chair. The chair is 3 inches away from the Rebbe's leg. The scariest thing to me was that the Olam was going to push, I was going to push the chair into the Rebbe. But Antake pushed a little bit, but because there was no way I'd be able to hold back. I'm just a kid, right? I'm not going to be able to hold back the whole Olam. And everybody wants to hear, and there's no microphone. The Rebbe's not screaming, he's speaking. So the first thing, one of the things I remember is Menachem Shachat was a Bochor, an older Bochor, and he somehow miraculously was standing 2-3 people over, and he had in his pocket a micro cassette recorder. It was very small for those days. It was like this. He pulled it out and he hit record and he held it out toward the Rebbe. And that's how, if you hear the tape, you'll hear the first minute and a half or 2 minutes are very scratchy. And then the door opened up behind the Rebbe and Rabbi Groner, was it you, Yenison? I think it was Rabbi Groner. I remember seeing his face. Maybe he opened the door and you pushed. Was it you or Rabbi Groner? Zakshin. What are we here for? Say this from Cheder. What's so complicated? Was you or Rabbi Groner? So Rabbi Hackner brought the mic. Thank you, Yenison, because now we have a nice tape because of you. And no. You know what? The Chevra who hold the microphones and the cameras and this and that, all they did was they got beat up. They should get a round of applause from time to time. It's not the end of the world. Whether it's Schellenberg Goldstein or Yenison Hackner, Chaim Baruch, Schellenberg Eber, David Krinsky did not bad as well. V'chula, v'chula, v'chula. The Goldsteins. Anyway, but shkoyach. Anyway, I remember Rabbi Groner opened the door. He passed in a microphone. And that's why you'll hear from about 2 minutes into the Sikha, it's much more clear. And the Rebbe's eyes were closed. And I was asking by others who were there. I don't know everybody was there, but I asked Menachem. He didn't remember. I think I remember, after this many years, you start to doubt. But I think I remember that there were tears in the corners of the Rebbe's eyes. The Rebbe's eyes were closed. I know it sounds like a simple sikha, but the Rebbe was very, very... What? What's going on? Is it fire? We need to say l'chaim? What happened? L'chaim. Anyway, the Rebbe's eyes were closed. The Rebbe said that sikha that you guys surely know word by word balpeh. The Rebbe offered basically that whoever, by the way, it's a very interesting verter in the sikha, besides for what's on the lines, what's between the lines. The Rebbe says, whoever did not, from Mitzad Eza Sibba, didn't write in yet, this is about 36 hours after the verdict. If for whatever reason you didn't write in yet, what? I guess everybody was supposed to write in to give the Rebbe a bracha, to ask the Rebbe for a bracha, veisach nicht. But if for Me'ezah Sibba you didn't write in yet, you can still write in. Those who wrote, you don't have to write again. You should write your name and your mother's name. And don't worry, it's between you and the Eibusher, but whatever you want, you could write. So first of all, for some reason, Chassidim, I guess we should have been wishing the Rebbe Mazel Tov and asking the Rebbe for a bracha, like we were supposed to know that. Seriously. Second of all, Ki'ilu, we have a problem. The Rebbe, so what did the Rebbe say? It's between you and the Eibusher. I'm not even going to read it. I mean, it's obvious, I'm sure, to everyone here, but none of us would mind if the Rebbe reads our letter. There's nothing that by us is private, right? K'movin, from the Rebbe, but that's what the Rebbe said. That whoever, don't worry, write anything. So there were tremendous brachas that happened. I could tell you from my family, I don't know that this is from the bigger brachas, the smaller brachas. I had a sister who was allergic to wheat, dairy, whole bunch of other things. What else, Ta? Other things, whatever. Allergic to basically everything. And Yiddish Shemam, and my mother wrote that in the list of things, and that was gone immediately. But there were people who could move in who had babies then. If I think the older Bachrim were running around in Borough Park and putting up signs and getting panim. Fax machines were like the newest thing then. There were like 2 fax machines in Crown Heights. And they were knocking away. I remember, even as a kid, people were running to Manhattan to the big balabatim that they had, the high-end law firms, they had fax machines. People were sending to them and giving out the numbers and pulling, sending carfuls of faxes kept coming. Other people were dictating and people were writing over. Anyway, and the video I'm sure you've seen, the Rebbe the next day goes with bags and bags and bags of panim to the oil. Oh, another thing I remember, I was upstairs in Rabbi Krinsky's office, And before the Rebbe left, I remember somebody, I don't remember who it was, came running with the Behola, and a bunch of his sons and Adims grabbed their gartlach and started putting them on and started running out. Later as in recently, I learned that the Rebbe said that he wanted Krinsky's mention should handle the money. Because the Rebbe explained in the Sikha, he said that the panim should be in one envelope. In order to save time and to save tircha, the panim should be in one envelope and the dmei pan should be in another envelope. So I remember somebody came running up that his sons and Adims have to come because the Rebbe wants them to handle the money. If I'm not mistaken, again, this is not something I witnessed myself, but the Rebbe said he wanted it all deposited in the bank that day. He wanted to make sure that the money was handled correctly, so he told Rabbi Krinsky that his people should handle it. Anyway, then the Rebbe went out. I thought I was on the fire escape or in the window when the Rebbe pulled out, but that's the angle of the video. Lepoil, the Chevra in JEM showed me that I was standing right there in front as the Rebbe pulled out, so I guess I was down there, and I got the wrong camera angle. My memory played a trick on me. But anyway, I was standing right there, and the Rebbe pulled out, and it was full of people, and again, the faxes and kept coming. They kept bringing them to the Rebbe at the Ohel v'chulu. So that's something, because I was right there, I wanted to share by the Sikha. I don't know, very few people could have been there. And then whatever, we danced for 7 days, and the rest is all on the record, and you guys must know better than me.